So hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Secrets of the Viz. Today I have my good friend Heather, who is here again to talk about her IronViz entry, both on her entry as well as the Marathon Viz, which talks about the behind the scenes of getting ready for IronViz. Over to you, Heather, to talk a little bit about what's changed since we last spoke.
Well, I've built some vizzes and they've gone really well. One of those things that if you hang around the data firm long enough, you learn about IronViz. So spending an entire month on a single viz is probably not too different from the way that I normally end up creating vizzes. I tend to not be able to put them down until they're perfect. But yeah, IronViz is just a step up. It's one of those things that you definitely want to do well because there's a lot of people watching and you want to get a really good topic. This year I sort of started with having a chat with my good friend ChatGPT and trying to figure out what can I have a look at, what can I examine and keep me interested for a full month so that I can actually get this thing finished. So in chatting with ChatGPT, I ended up focusing on piracy in general and how it affects things like pricing, the costs of streaming services, and then how those things interact with piracy rates. And it struck me that when you read any of the research about this, it's very black and white. Piracy bad and paying for your content good. There is no in between. But the more you dive into the motivations of the data that's there, there's a sort of very grey area in the middle, I found, where there's unscrupulous practices on both sides and maybe things are not as black and white as it seems. So that's where I kind of dug into one of the key things that was coming up in a lot of the anti-piracy advertising was about how bad it was for your computer to be these things from the internet where you didn't know where they were coming from and it was going to make things really glitchy. And so that's where the inspiration for the title really came from, was we wanted to have a little bit of a glitchy thing go there, making it feel a little bit dark and dirty and just bad in general. We start the viz with a really black and white scheme to show off that contrast. As you scroll down, very subtly, the background changes to grey. So by the time you get to the bottom, it's quite grey by the bottom. So on the first pass through, it's very much looking at that very black and white view of things. And when you get to the bottom, there's that little icon that you can click on and you can take the pirate's eye patch off. And you can then come back through the viz and the tooltips have changed. And there's different things that are going to appear there. But yeah, collecting all of the data for this was insane. If I had known going in that this is what was going to happen, I would have chosen a different data set. But by the time I realized what was going on, I'd put so much time into it, I just sunk cost fallacy. We just go in the whole way. None of the data was all in the same place or in the same format, and much of it was in reports that were all over the place. You wouldn't believe how much of this stuff is behind paywalls. So it was very much a matter of sometimes just going into, say, Disney's end of year financial report and pulling out their turnover data each year, finding all of these annual reports, which were very graphic based. There's no tables. You just got to go in there, find this number, go out, paste it into your data set, go back, find another one. Then I had to document where it had all come from in order to lend some validity to the findings. So there was a good deal of referencing things. And that is something that I would not recommend that you do if you're going to tackle IronViz in the future. It's certainly something that I don't recommend that I do. Choose a data set that's nice and tidy.
I mean, with a topic like this, I wouldn't imagine that there's any official data set that has that because it's dodgy in the first place. And the fact that you had all this data collection in place, and also you managed to note down how long it took you for each of the different steps so that you could do that IronViz Marathon Viz was impressive by itself.
Well, I didn't log it down. I can't keep track of that kind of thing. But afterwards, I wish I knew how long I'd spent on it. And I've heard a lot of people say that about their IronViz, but I got an email a couple of weeks later that sort of was from this Rescue Time app that I had installed a long time ago to track productivity. And it sends me an email every once in a while, and quite often I obviously ignore it because I've forgotten all about it. But this time I looked at it and went, hey, I wonder whether it was tracking what I was doing during October. And sure enough, it had tracked every app that I'd opened on the computer, the websites that I'd been to, when I'd done it, and how long I'd spent on it. From there, I could look and say, okay, I've spent this much time on research and this much time doing other things. Obviously, I had to filter out when I was doing my online grocery shopping and that kind of stuff. I might have been thinking while I was doing it, but I didn't count it. So it left me with a data set that showed where all my time had gone. And that was confronting. It was able to tell me what was the total amount of time that I had spent on the IronViz entry. And I thought, yeah, okay, I can actually turn this into something that we can look at. So yeah, that's where the IronViz marathon came from.
That's impressive. I mean, 4 weeks is not a long time and not a short time as well to get something ready for IronViz. And I think a lot of folks struggle with the data collection part, because that's where you really need to spend a lot of time trying to find your narrative and how you're going to kind of anchor everything in your viz. Over time, we've seen people spending less time on design because you kind of know where you're going for. It's just whether you have the data to support what you're trying to say. Yeah. So I know Tableau does publish a framework for IronViz. Week 1, find your data. Week 2, find your story. Week 3, design. And then week 4, iterate. But it's always never going to be that case. It's going to be first 2 to 3 weeks data, and then the last week a mad rush for design.
Yeah. I mean, I know people who have gotten 2 weeks in and gone, this isn't working, throw it out, start over. And that's a brave decision.
It is a brave decision. So you talked about the data. I would assume that is probably the most challenging part of your IronViz.
Yeah, because as I was going, you talk about developing the story. You start to put all the elements of the story together and realize, hang on, I've jumped to a conclusion here, but I haven't shown it. I need more data. I need to go back and find some more of this or look into some more of that. And sometimes I'd already come across that and I'd put it away somewhere, and sometimes I hadn't. Sometimes it was a matter of I need to show this in a different way than I thought I was going to before. Finding streaming services that I didn't know existed before was another one that tripped me up, because the ones that are available in Australia are not the same as what you have in the States or in other countries.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think with the commercialization of TV, there's too many streaming services. I know I have Netflix, I have Disney Plus, I have HBO Max, which I've cancelled it because it doesn't have much going on. I've cancelled my Apple TV as well, but everything is just scattered everywhere. And it's very annoying for us as analysts because data is just not within a centralized system. So it's hard to do stories around that. So there was something interesting, which was this GIF image. Both you and I, we are fans of animation, but unfortunately, Tableau doesn't really play well with animations. But I love your workaround because you still have the viz sitting in front, so you could still hover over and get the tooltips and everything, which was a really nice touch.
Yeah, it was tricky because I ran into scale problems. I had built the chart in Tableau, obviously, and used pages, and I had to cycle through the pages, take all of the screenshots, and then load them into something to build the GIF. But the problem when you went to lay the Tableau chart over the top is that the scale and just tiny changes in the boundaries and things, trying to do it with transparent background in the GIF was killing me, because for some reason it just changed things within the editor that I was using. So I needed to keep the black background on it. which meant that now I've got black halfway down the viz where the background's supposed to be grey. And so this is where we've got this torn map effect going on here. This was really just an effort to hide the black background of my GIF.
That is interesting. I didn't notice that. I was like, okay, there's this black portion like that's just popping up, but I didn't know that that was something that you had to work around for the transparency.
I don't think it's my finest hour, but it did the trick.
It works. I love the animation of it. It just shows the trend. One of my favorite charts to do is scrolly tally as you scroll through and the story just unfolds itself. And usually this kind of like racing line charts are very prevalent in scrolly tally business. Just because it's engaging. If you look at identity attributes, motion is one of the key ones that people pay attention to. So this definitely catches everyone's attention. IronViz aside, you have been on fire the last year, building a couple of really creative pieces like this Sci-Fi Dataverse, which is basically a console for you to explore the different sci-fi films from Data Plus TV. And this is really interesting, like the design of it and the interaction of it. So you could actually use the console and it really works. But as you said earlier on, the data set, getting it to be performant is definitely another problem that a lot of us face when we're playing around with Data Plus TV.
So the first thing that I did was filter anything that wasn't related to what I was trying to do. That pulled down the number of rows I was dealing with considerably, not enough to make it small. Then I was able to export that into a format for the network diagram. So I used the IronViz that the Dataverse have got on their website to plug in my very interesting looking JSON file. And this was the result. And there's so many of them. Looking at them on my computer screen and thinking, how am I going to visualize this? How am I going to put this on a viz? It's too big to actually look at. You can't see everything. You're going to have to scroll around. So I started having a look around on Tablet Public to see, has anyone else done this with really large network diagrams? I found Lisa Trescott's viz on Breaking Bad. She had a big network chart on there and it needed some scrolling. So I reached out to her and said, what are the rules on this? And she said, there are no rules. People will figure it out. You can do whatever you want. And I'm like, okay, cool. I've been given permission. It's fine. And she said, you don't need permission. So I said, it's fine. So I brought it back and got it back into IronViz and went, yeah, okay, I'm just going to go for it. But gee, it really looks like a galaxy with all these lines connecting it. It's really nebulous. And hey, what if Viz was actually a spaceship? What if I could like fly around in it? And that was the thing.
I love the viewport thingy that you built in. So what's up your plate? Is there any Viz that you're currently working on that you might want to tease the audience a little bit?
Well, I've got a little project that I'm working on with a couple of other people that hopefully means we'll have a new piece of content out for everybody to check out soonish.
Alrighty. Thank you again, Heather, for jumping on this call to share about your IronViz entry, the journey that you had, and also that fantastic viz that you had on the Sci-Fi Dataverse. I think that is really fun. I hope everyone learned something from this, and we'll see everyone at the next episode. Thank you.